Welcome back to the Diary of a CMO, the podcast where I sit with CMOs and thought leaders in marketing and related media, tech, and creative industries. We'll talk about how they got to where they are, strategies and life lessons we can learn from them to help build a career, business, and ultimately a life that we love. I hope you enjoy, and please subscribe. Great. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us in the second episode of the Diary of a CMO. Today, I am in the, even if I don't know if I can say this for virtual settings, but I'm in the presence of greatness. I'm in the presence of greatness, a brand maverick, over 2 decades of marketing experience, multiple award-winning marketer. 2021 Loris Marketer of the Year, 2021 Ad Focus Industry Leader of the Year, 2022 I'm running out of breath. 2022 Macalized Marketer of the Year. The list goes on and on. I am so excited to have on Khensani Nobanda. I hope I got that right. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did. Everyone calls me Khensi anyway, but you got it right.
All right. I'm going to stick to Khensi then. Thank you very much, Khensi. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I think one of the first few things I like to do when I get on these kinds of calls is to ask the question, if for those who are meeting you for the first time, how would you introduce yourself in a way that captures your origin story, like we like to say in marketing, who you are today and what your life mission is. But I think I'm going to do a little differently today. I spotted on your profile on LinkedIn, love marketing, hashtag love marketing. There's very few people where you'd find that hashtag on their profile, right there, love marketing. I'm just curious, where did the love for marketing come from?
Yeah. So maybe I'll take you back a little bit. So when I was at university, when I was studying my BCom at Wits, I was actually studying IT. And the reason I was studying IT is, my dad said, you're going to make a lot of money from computers. So that's what you should go study.
I mean, he was right. Actually.
Typical black father, right?
I get you.
And I have to say, like, that first class, I hated it. I remember thinking, oh my God, there's no way I can work in this thing. And then for my second year, someone actually suggested to me that why don't you take marketing as one of your courses, but still continue with IT, because there's no way I was going to stop doing IT because my dad was paying. So he was like, whilst I'm paying, you're continuing down this road.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So when I just remember my first class in marketing was Professor Steve Burgess. And just that first class, I knew I'd found my calling. There was just so much about it that I loved in terms of, one, I guess, what I call the logic bit of marketing. Where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? Where can you grow? How can you build better brands? But also the creativity part of it. Like, I
Right.
still say, doing advertising and,
Right.
putting together, sponsorship platforms. So I loved it. But it was funny that at the end of my degree, all my job offers were in IT. And
Wow.
I was extremely stressed because I was
Oh my
just like,
God. Oh my God.
I'm
I can
gonna,
only imagine.
I was like, I'm gonna hate my life. And then Unilever offered me my first marketing. It was my only job in marketing that they offered me, and I took it without blinking. It was actually the lowest paying. So you should know, like, for me to take the lowest paying job, move from
Right.
Joburg to Durban as a 21-year-old, I already
Right.
just had a sense that this is where I wanted to be. And yeah, just from there, from Unilever and working with brands that I've worked on, and having taken a break in 2011, where I had a little bit of a midlife crisis about whether or not I still wanted to be in marketing. So when I say I love marketing, I actually had a 6-month break where I wasn't working, and I had to like really go into a lot of introspection about what I wanted my future to look like, and did I still want to be in marketing? And actually, The answer was yes. I still wanted to
Wow.
be in marketing. Yeah, so
Wow.
I'm pretty clear. I love marketing.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. I think my story is different in terms of like where like the love for marketing or advertising kind of came, because I've also spent about probably about 15 years now, not as much as two
Mm.
decades. I'm kind of close, but so mine was more from an out of home outdoor advertising standpoint. So
Yeah.
in Lagos, we have things they call Danfo. They are like the public transportation system. At least at the time when I was much younger, it's getting better now, with the rapid transit etc. But then, when I would sit in this public transport and I'm going to somewhere wherever, I look at the out of home, like the outdoor boards, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I wonder why they used green. Why green? Like, I don't know. I don't really like green. Like maybe blue would have been better, Yeah. I mean, I didn't understand all of the science behind it. Do you get what I mean? It was just based
Yeah.
off my preference, what I like and what I didn't like. And I just kind of followed that. And after a few years, a friend of mine then just tells me like, guy, I think you have a thing for marketing and advertising. Maybe you should. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you should. And that's kind of how it was for me. So
Yeah.
I can also say now, even if I don't have it on my profile, maybe I should add it to my
I think so.
profile. That I also love marketing and I appreciate that. Now I know we've gone on a bit of a tandem here, but for those who are meeting you for the first time, Kenzie, can you introduce yourself in an attempt to capture, your origin story, where you are now, and what the next thing is for Kenzie?
Yeah, origin story always reminds me when we talk about villains, right, in movies. What was the villain's origin story? So when I saw that, I was like, that's hilarious.
Oh my God. I'm going to change that script. I'm going to change that, Kenzie. I'm going to change that.
But to be honest, I think so. My mom was a teacher. She retired last year, and from a very young age, I loved reading. And my mom and dad love to tell the story that I read the book Roots by Alex Haley when I was like 5 years
Interesting.
old. And I don't know if you've seen like Roots, and they couldn't believe I
Wow.
was reading it and just really
Wow.
getting into it. So I think
Wow.
the origin really comes from the love of words, comes from the love of when you read how you get into this new world that you create. You might not see it, it's not on TV, but you create it in your head and stuff. So that I think was the first bit. Is I loved the idea of creating worlds that other people can just buy into, love, and see places that they've never been into. And if you think about advertising or marketing, a lot of it is about creating these worlds that actually, I always say, in fact, marketing should be a reflection of the type of world that we want to see, right?
Wow.
And then hold to the mirror the world that is not what we want to see, and hold the mirror to ourselves to say, this is probably not where the world should be going. So it probably comes, not probably, a lot of it comes from the fact that I just always loved reading, to the extent where even when I recruit into my team, the first thing I look for is curiosity. If
Wow.
you tell me that you've not listened to a podcast and I ask you, you haven't read, you haven't learned anything, I'm just like, I don't want you in my team. Like, you don't seem curious.
Oh my God.
You just don't seem curious enough, because I mean, think about, I've been in marketing for 20 something years. When I started, there was no digital marketing, right?
Yeah.
For for me to go to the board at Nedbank and get investment in digital marketing, I had to learn so that I could go sell the story. There's no story you're
Wow.
selling if you don't understand. So for me, I
Yes.
think it's really around the curiosity, and
Right.
and that's what marketing is actually. When you're curious about where's your business like not doing well, what are the challenges, there's an
Yes.
area on the funnel that we believe is an issue in for the Nedbank brand. But for us to understand what drives that, we had to do a lot of reading to
Sure.
basically learn how other brands have done it, how other companies have done it. What's
Right.
the journal sort of communication in that space? So And that's how we were able to put together a brand plan that said, here's how we're going to solve for it. So if you
Right.
think that, your learning ends when you become the chief marketing officer, then you've got another thing coming, because
Right.
I've actually
Right.
found I've learned and grown so much in the last 5 years. So my origin story really just comes from the love of reading, to be honest.
It's almost very interesting when I hear what you're saying now, because I remember reading books by Jackie Collins, Daniel
Yeah.
Steele growing up. And this is like I was a teenager and my dad would hand me those books, but like, it's interesting. But I admire the fact that, even at this level of your career, the conversation regarding curiosity is still a very critical one for you, to the extent that
Absolutely.
if you're not curious enough, it's unlikely that you'll be on Kansas team. We're just putting it out there
Absolutely.
now so that you
Yeah, we're
know. We're
putting it
just putting it
out
out
there.
there. We're just putting it out there now so that you know. So tell me about your current role at Nedbank.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating because I look after marketing for the Nedbank Group, and
Okay.
part of that is basically corporate investment banking, retail and business banking, our wealth cluster, which includes insurance, asset management, and private wealth, and our offshore in the Isle of Man, as well as Africa regions. So for Africa regions, we've got quite an interesting market share in sub-Saharan Africa. And then we own about 19% of ETI, which is the owner of EcoBank. So that's our presence in the West African sort of side of the continent. So that's the marketing piece. But what I've found there's three things I found exciting about my current role at Nedbank. The first thing is the corporate affairs part of my job is I look after transformation. Now, I don't know how much you would know about the Triple BEE scorecard in South Africa, but it's basically a number of elements like employment equity, management control, procurement, skills development, all of these elements where, because of the history of our country, is how do we make sure that we're transferring resources from where they were in the past to redistributing them more equally in our society. So that scorecard for the bank is managed by my team and I, where
Right.
we basically say, from let me take empowerment financing. We have to spend X billion of rand funding Black fully owned and Black fully managed businesses. And we have to commit to that, and we get scored on that, which I absolutely love, because that for me is impact. So it's real impact in South Africa. The
Right.
second part of my role is corporate and social investment. And again, I guess coming from marketing, right? When I took over the portfolio, it was just handing out money to like NGOs. And one of the things I challenged my team on was, we can't end at handouts. How do we're a bank anyway? How do we move people from grants to becoming fully fledged businesses in the future? And hopefully those businesses will bank with us. Even if they bank with someone else, it's okay. You're creating entrepreneurs, and those entrepreneurs are creating jobs. So what's been really interesting for me is, whilst I still have marketing that I love, these two other areas have just opened up something much more special and much more impactful, I think, for me, and purposeful in the context of the country and the continent that I live in. And then
Right.
maybe the last thing I would say is, I obviously sit on the group executive of the bank, and
Right.
there's nothing like running a bank. Like, it's literally, so it has been one of my biggest growth areas, just understanding the impact of interest rate hikes, being able to talk about endowment income, being able to talk about impairments. And so just really rounded me, I think, overall as a business person. So yeah, marketing is still obviously the biggest part of my job, but I do feel like these other areas have just, yeah, they've rounded me up so much that I actually enjoy what I do even more than I would, I think.
Yeah, I think it brings a lot of. I think it brings some level of, you know, for lack of better word, some level of juice and excitement to it.
Yeah,
When you have to
yeah,
go into like areas you probably haven't been in before and just kind of make sense of them. I can imagine that.
yeah, absolutely.
Just to feed my curiosity, when I was looking at your profile, I noticed like from skincare to liquor brands to tea to this and to that and financial services, all of this. Like in my mind, one of the questions that comes to mind is in your experience across all of those categories or subcategories, what are the similarities and the differences you have seen, especially from a consumer behavior standpoint?
So I think the first thing that's similar is marketing is marketing is marketing. And I always have to get people to understand that.
Yeah.
When you take a brand, you always have to understand, what does your brand stand for? What are the needs that your brand is trying to solve? And how does your brand solve those needs? Whether it's beer, it's a bank, or it's margarine. You have to be very clear about all of those things and stuff. However, the differences come, I guess, if you think about CPG, or fast moving consumer goods,
Right.
your impact is much quicker. So it's reading like daily sales at, at the retail store every day and understanding how you're performing every day. Whereas in banking, we take 2 months to approve your home loan, right? And stuff. So that, like, in terms of, how do you measure the success of marketing in that
Right.
context? It becomes quite different because the way the system works and the business works is obviously quite different and stuff. But the other thing that is similar is what I call brand purpose, right? Well, everyone calls it brand purpose, but I'll tell you what I mean. People ask me, were you always as passionate about other brands that you've worked on the way you are passionate about Nedbank? And I say yes. They say even Rama Margarine, and I say yes.
Oh my god.
And like I always say to them, every brand has got something in it that you can connect to, and it makes you passionate about it. And I'll tell you about Rama, for example. Rama's positioning was Rama Good Start, and it basically was saying that when you give your kids Rama margarine in the morning, you set them up to have a really good start to the day, which means they'll do well at school.
Right.
So that's what I bought into. I didn't the product itself, margarine, whatever, you know what I mean. But I bought into what
Yeah.
Rama stood for, and that's what gave me
Right.
energy. So on any brand
Got it.
that you work on, you can find the thing that connects you to that brand. Even if like beer, I'm not a beer drinker, but there was a lot about milk stout or Hansa in terms of what it stood for that I bought into, even though I'm not a beer drinker and stuff. So for me, that's another similarity, that the brands will always have something in terms of their DNA and what they stand for that you can always connect to and use to connect to consumers and stuff.
Right.
And maybe the last difference is when you work in FMCG, you generally are managing the P&L, so of the entire thing up to margin.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
managing R&D, you're managing the supply chain, all of that.
Right.
In banking as well as in telecoms, it is so matrix. So, and
Right.
it's not marketing led, right? So Unilever is marketing led, SAB is
Right.
marketing led. At
Right.
Nedbank, it's risk led. Like, should we give a Tayu a loan or not? Like,
Oh my god.
so it's risk led. So you have to find your world as marketing in that space to ensure that the finance people don't look at you as a cost center, but rather regard you as a value creator. And
Right.
that's been a big part of my focus since I took on this job, was to make sure that people were very clear, how do we create value for the bank? And we're not just those people who do TV ads and put on the Nedbank Cup and then we go chill
Right.
somewhere and have a drink
Right.
and stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so that's been a big difference.
Got it. Just to build on that point about cost center and value creation. I mean, you've been in the industry this long. I'm sure you're not new to the argument between those two, perspectives. How do you advise that executives at your level or across board within the marketing discipline? How do you advise that they manage that that friction when it happens sometimes in some organizations? Obviously, some companies are very clear on the value that marketing adds or brings to the table, but we can't say the same for every company. So for marketing professionals or executives that find themselves in those kinds of companies, how would you advise they navigate that so that stakeholders or chief execs are buy into that ideology that marketing indeed is a value creation center?
Hmm. I think the first thing is know your business, right? So And when I say that, it seems like a small thing, but I sit with so many people sometimes and I'm like, okay, so what's happening with the impairments number? They're like, impairments? Like, so
Wow.
if you don't know the business that you operate in and you're having discussions with risk people or finance people, obviously they're going to lose respect for you, right? Because they
Right.
don't even know the business that you're trying to sell. So I think that's
Exactly.
fundamental. And then to know the business, by the way, find out what are the right committees and meetings to be in, and don't wait to get invited. So at Nedbank, for example, one of our biggest meetings is called the Transactional Balance Sheet Forum. That's where we decide where we're going to spend our balance sheet funds in terms of growing market share.
Right.
Marketing never used to be in that meeting. So it's run by our
Wow.
CFO. It's run by our
Wow.
CFO. And I told him, I'm inviting myself to the meeting. I'm going to be on the committee of that meeting. So he was just like, oh, okay. But he loved it because you can see she's interested. She wants to learn. She wants to grow. And then when I was in that meeting, I mean, literally, I think my third meeting, I could already contribute. And already people are like, oh, okay. She's not just doing TV ads. She's actually challenging people about where we're saying we're going to put our money from a balance sheet perspective and all of that.
Wow.
So don't wait to be invited. Find out what are the meetings that are the most important for your organization and just go in. Like no one's gonna
Wow.
kick you out, let me tell you,
Wow.
unless the company's got a shitty culture, right? But like if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't,
yeah. I get
they'll
you.
they'll allow you in. And then the third thing is teach your exco and board members. I'm going to call it the basics of marketing, right? But teach them to understand. And we've decided at Nedbank that we're going to use the marketing funnel to be how we help the board and exco to understand, so that when I'm having a conversation and saying, we need to get the right people to be aware of the product that we're selling, and then here are the different roles that our media mix plays. I'm teaching them so that next time when I come and present a plan, they already know, oh, this is how it works.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you actually have to take it upon yourself to ensure that you teach them. Don't teach them too much so that they ask you difficult questions. Teach them enough that they ask you.
I get you. I
like,
get you.
good, but not too much. And then the last thing, I was very lucky and am very lucky. Our chief executive retires at the end of May, and incredibly lucky that I've got a very good relationship with him, and he has been supportive from the onset. But when I took on the role, I made it clear to him that I'm not taking it on unless he helps me navigate this journey,
Wow.
which he did.
Wow.
But the one relationship that us as marketers, I think, shirk from is the CFO relationship. Now, for me at Nedbank, I have a monthly meeting with our chief financial officer, and it's a safe space meeting because in that meeting, we ask each other questions, right? I can say, Mike, his name is also Mike. The other day when you were talking through results, this is what you were talking about. I don't know what you meant, but it's just the two of us now. It's a safe space. I can ask the question and he helps me understand. Similar to him, he'll say, you guys were talking about cost per acquisition. What do you mean by that and stuff? And so so Mike and I actually have a very strong partnership too. And I'll tell you a funny story, like when Google invited CMOs, CFOs to come have a round table around the relationship between marketing and finance. And I put it in Mike Davis's diary, and then somehow it got deleted from my diary. And
Right.
so Mike ends up at Google alone without me,
Wow.
like doing the
Wow.
session. And do you know the feedback I got afterwards? Firstly, like some of the CFOs were looking at him going, is he the chief marketing officer? Because he's talking with the
Wow.
market.
That's so good. That is so good. That is so good. That is so
So
good.
absolutely. So you have to, don't shirk away from that relationship. Make sure that you've got the relationship, because what it means is even when we need to cut budgets, like what happened during COVID, right? Your headline earnings as a bank were down 65%. Normally in companies, they go cut your marketing budget by 60%. Mike came to me and said, you know this better. I trust you. So you come back to me and tell me what you think you need to ensure that the brand stays strong in the market, and what you would cut. And I came back and I said, I'll cut about 20%. And Mike said, cool, happy with that. So it wasn't like this is what you're going to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's what I would say is like some tips to like really, build the
Yeah.
value creation thing.
Yo, that's just gold, Kenzie. Like that's just gold. That's just gold. I have a marketing agency background. and I know the struggle that CMOs or group executives have when they have to defend budgets, when they have to
Yep.
go into these kinds of business review meetings like the ones you were talking about. Like, so looking at it from your perspective and these kind of nuggets that you've given, trust me, is really, really gold. Earlier when we started talking, I mean, you talked about the impact side of what you sort of oversee. However, I'm not I don't want to ask the impact question along those lines. I'm thinking about it more from a um, gender balance standpoint, and I'll use this as a context for you in in reaching out to CMOs to be on the podcast and all of that stuff. I have a few friends here in Lagos, Nigeria. I have a few friends in Joburg, SA. I have a few friends in Nairobi, Kenya. I have a few friends here and there. So I would just reach out and like, yo, I'm trying to do this, da, 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 da. And what is very obvious, and there's actually research for this. I found the research online recently. And that the research highlights the imbalance between male and female chief marketing officers or group executives within the marketing space. And I'm just curious to get your take on it. What do you think is responsible for that imbalance? It's getting
What
better, to be fair with you.
what did they
There's
mean? So there's more male.
more male, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So and it's really it's not like 54%, 46% split. Do you get what I mean? It's like
Mm.
70%, 30% type of split. But
Wow.
so I'm just curious, like why do you think that's the case? I mean, I know a few. When I look at my network and I look at the CMOs that I know, of course, I know a lot more male CMOs than women CMOs. And I couldn't help but wonder, like, what really accounts for that kind of imbalance from your own perspective, at least.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm surprised that the difference is so much, but it's maybe not even a marketing issue. I think it's an overall gender issue. And I was
Hmm.
speaking to a couple of people about this, but I think the first thing is, as women, we never go for what we want. So
Right.
when I started at Unilever at 21, and I said I'm going to be a marketing director by the age of 30, everyone laughed at me. And everyone said, she's so arrogant. Look at her, it's never going to happen. So ambitious women are looked at a little bit weirdly, to be honest. Like, what is this?
Mm,
And
mm.
I achieved it at 25, actually. So I achieved it 5 years before I had said I'm going to
Wow.
achieve it.
Wow.
Even when
Wow.
I joined Nedbank, I had come in at a lower role than me. But just before I joined, the guy I was going to be reporting to resigned. And instead of panicking, I was like, well, I want his job then. Like, and, so I think in general, in general, as women, we may be not as shy to go for what we want, and we expect that someone's going to see, oh, Khensi's amazing. Let's promote her. No, like, you'll be lucky if someone does that. It does happen. But you
Yeah.
have to articulate very clearly that this is what I want and this is what I'm going for. And you've got nothing to lose. If you don't get it, you don't get it. But at least you've tried and you've done something. I think the second thing is what I call the financial conversation. So when I got into my current role, one of the things I did was call the guy before me and say, here's the offer they've given me. What do you think? And then
Right.
he was like, nah, I think your shares could be a little bit higher. I think they've given you a nice sign-on bonus. So then I went back and negotiated my money. Now, as a
Interesting.
woman, if you then find out that, Jesus, I'm being paid less, it obviously removes your ambition because you're like,
Right. Right. Right.
like this is just. Whereas with
Right.
me, I literally ask our CEO, "Are you sure I'm not leaving any money on the table?" He literally looks at me.
What? Wow.
And I say, Mike, if you walk away and you say, Khensi, I pay you fairly, it's got nothing to do with gender, you are paid fairly, then I believe you. But if you come back to me and you say, look, okay, you've challenged me and this is what I've looked at, and I won't judge you, Mike. I'll take the money. Like, I won't judge
Absolutely,
you.
man. Absolutely.
So for me, I think it's around us as women. Sometimes we just don't go for what we want. And then, like, also, I've looked at, if you think about the CMOs in South Africa, there's maybe one or two female CMOs, sorry, like that are known, but most of them are male. For some reason, as women, we don't want to put ourselves out there. Like we don't want to showcase our talents, showcase what we've done. And it's such a pity because I can tell you, I get job offers so often because I'm willing to put myself out
Wow.
there, right? Whereas if you are like a head of marketing somewhere and you're really good, but no one knows about you, how are you ever going to get like the big CMO jobs and stuff?
Right,
So you
right,
have to put yourself
right,
out there. And it's not bragging, it's not this, it's just you're just showcasing what you do with your brand and your organization. Yeah.
right. Wow, wow. That's wild. See, okay, I'm gonna ask you a question now because um this conversation is going to, what's the word, it's going too well. Like I don't want to believe that you have the right answers to everything, and like you have it all figured out, and it's on that premise I wanted to ask you, like, and my attempt is that, you know for anyone who's listening to you, especially like young women, whether within the marketing space or just professional space, generally speaking, um, so that when they listen to you, they don't feel like, oh no, I can't do what Kenzie's doing. Can't you hear her? She sounds perfect. She knows what she's doing. Da, 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 da. So my question is, what is Kenzie's deepest fear? Because I feel like that question hopefully would show this younger audience, that or anybody that's listening anyway,
Yeah.
that I'm human. I'm not AI, whatever. Yeah. So what's Kenzie's deepest fear?
I mean, before I answer that question, I want to take people back to 2011 when
Hmm.
I quit working for 6 months because I didn't know if I loved marketing anymore. I was in a really, really bad space and I had to take time out. So this has certainly not been a journey of just like straight up, right? Like I've had a serious down where I was fortunate enough to be able to move back in with my parents so that they could cocoon me. I
Wow.
used to I used to fast forward my own TV ads that I'd made on Lux and stuff like that because I was just
Wow.
like, oh God, I hate this industry. But that was such an important time for me because it allowed me to articulate for myself whether or not I still wanted to be in marketing, but more importantly, how I wanted to be in corporate. Because I think part of what was going on with me was the corporate thing wasn't accepting me. One of my biggest values is authenticity. So if you ask me what my biggest fear is not being accepted. Because to be honest, this is Khensi. Whether like, you can walk into the Nedbank boardroom with all the board there. You can see me with my agencies. You can see me with my friends. You can see me with my husband and my family. You see the same Khensi. I talk
Wow.
shit. I laugh. And not being accepted means you're not accepting me deeply. It hurts me actually because I'm giving you all myself. And not being accepted in a corporate environment is even harder because that's where I'm meant to make money. So when they say
Right.
you're not good enough, you're not showing up well enough, actually I end up not even being able to do my best work because I'm so
Wow.
caught up in
Yeah.
this fear of
Yeah.
like not being
Yeah.
accepted and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
like that is truly my biggest fear. And I guess part of my success at Nedbank, even though it's a bank, they've allowed this tattooed girl who swears and wears sneakers. And, they've just said, you know what, do you, boo, as long as you do your job, we're fine.
Oh my God. Wow. Wow. That's beautiful. And that's I mean, that's really a big deal, especially for a bank. I mean, and it's not some small bank, like
Yeah.
especially for a bank to be able to, from a cultural standpoint, be able to, allow that level of authenticity. That's a really, really beautiful thing. That's a really
I'm
beautiful
very
thing.
lucky.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. If you think about like just growing up, right? Like what is different in the Kenzie in uni or teenage Kenzie and the Kenzie we see today? What has changed? Is there any?
Yeah, so I think at a young age, always very competitive.
Right.
Captain of the sports team of athletics or at varsity, always in leadership positions. I was always like house captain, whatever those different things were. So the leader sort of qualities in me were always from a very young age. It was pretty clear
Right.
that I like stepping
Right.
up and taking on, scary or not, I step up and take it
Right.
on. As I've
Right.
gotten older, I've probably lost a little bit of what I would call my courage, right? Because you go through life and you get knocked down and you do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to get more of that 21-year-old who said, I'm going to be a marketing director by the age of 30 and then got it at 25. So I'd love to, so
Right.
that, probably, and I guess it's age, right? More cautious, I would say. Although people who know me would say, where is she cautious? We've never seen it. Like,
Oh boy. Oh
but
boy.
but I absolutely know that I used to be even much more braver. But the biggest difference came from
Mm.
feedback that I was given as when I started running the tea category as a 25-year-old. My boss at that time said to me, your energy is such that when you're in a good mood, the room is in a good mood. Everyone just perks up. But when you're in a bad mood, you just bring the entire room down. Now, if you're going to be a
Wow.
leader, you have to manage your emotions. I never used to manage my emotions. Like, I was just like, I'll tell you exactly how I feel. If I'm sad, I'm sad. Like, what's up, you know? But I learned that as a leader, you really have to be able to what do they call, modulate your emotions. Doesn't
Right.
mean that your team doesn't have to know that you're not in a good space, but it can't impact them negatively. Like, you should just be, in fact, if you really can't manage it, just say, team, I'm not having a good day today, so I'm going to just log out. Let's connect tomorrow. The biggest difference you'll see with Khensi is this very moody 15-year-old to 25-year-old, very moody, could change moods just like that, to
Wow.
someone now who, not that I don't have a bad day, but I know
Of
not
course.
to show it publicly. I know how to
I get
manage
what
it
you mean.
better than I ever used to manage it. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's growth, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
growth.
growth.
That's growth. That's growth. Speaking of being human, obviously, I'm not sure that this pod would have been completed if we didn't have the conversation about AI, right? And I'm
Mm.
asking myself, as Nedbank or as a group exec overseeing marketing functions, as CMO, what is your what's sort of like an overview of your playbook when it comes to AI going forward?
Oh, we're so excited about AI, let me tell you. Like,
Oh wow! Oh wow! Oh wow!
yeah.
Wow!
No, I mean, here's what I love that we've done with our marketing team is we've embraced all these new digital technologies and all of that. And I'll get to AI, but I'll just give you a couple of examples. When the metaverse came out, we went to Exco, we asked for money, and I basically said, I want to play in the metaverse, because how can you ever know how to use the metaverse if you haven't at least
If
tried
you're not
something,
there,
if you're not there?
yeah.
And we did two things. One is we bought land in Ubuntu land, and we'd create, like, for our golf stuff, a couple of sort of, I guess, consumer things to do there. The second one is we went to a much more decentralized, right, where we went to Roblox, and we created a kids game called Chow Town, where kids are playing but learning how to basically manage money. And between these two things, we learned that actually the Ubuntu Land one doesn't work for us, but the Chowtown on Roblox one works for us. So we're not doing anything anymore in Ubuntu Land, but we're continuing with Chowtown. If we hadn't experimented, that we would never have had that answer. So experimentation is important. So AI is the same for us. So we basically took two campaigns that were already in market, and we worked with one of our
Right.
agencies and said, if we had had to have briefed this campaign into a couple of AI tools that we pulled together with the help of our group technology colleagues, what would have been the result of those campaigns, and compared them to what we actually put in market. And on one of the campaigns, we were like, yeah, we probably wouldn't have used this. But on the other one, we were like, yeah, we would have used this campaign actually. So you
Wow.
know,
Wow.
so actually our playbook going forward is we've chosen, if you look at our marketing calendar, a number of campaigns that are going to go through. We're going to use AI for them. So the next 2 months is us getting a couple of people up to speed with the tools, how to use them, because you still need people to be able to judge the
Right.
work and all of that and stuff.
Right.
We're
Right.
really, really hoping that we get to a point where a certain percentage of the campaigns that we do as a brand actually go through AI. Because what that means is instead of waiting 3 months or whatever for a campaign, you get it in less than a week, which is incredible. Two, it means
Wow.
we spend less money when it comes to agencies and stuff, and rather you're spending the money on media, so that people can actually see the work that you're doing. So we're incredibly excited about AI, to be honest. Like,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting times. Interesting times. I mean, I'm not. I haven't, like, in terms of like listening to actual work being done. Like you have cited like two very clear projects that you guys tested with, and now sort of that informed what you are going to be doing going forward. It will be interesting to see what sort of like other companies across board are doing to really leverage the advantage that this technology itself presents.
Hmm.
Just before I ask you, as we start to round up now, just before I ask you one of my final questions, when you think of, speaking of AI and just on that subject, just a bit, what is your, from a regulatory standpoint, right? Because that is the global conversation regarding AI,
Hmm.
right? How do we regulate this? Like, how do we ensure that this thing does not go out of hand or find its way into the hands of bad actors or whatever? How do we control this? What's your take on regulatory sort of frameworks for AI, especially because we're still in the early days of the tech itself?
Yeah, I think they're very important, right? Like for a number of reasons, even for the protection of your own brand, right? Because
Right.
the more you put things into that space, it can go into places that you don't want it to go. But I have to
Exactly.
remind you,
Exactly.
I work for a bank. If the a bank will find risk in every single thing that you do, so the fact that we can go through our risk and compliance guys
Right. Right.
shows
Right.
you that
Right. Got it.
we are we are applying ourselves in a framework that's very clear without putting our brand and our organization at risk. And you have to figure out what that looks like for your organization. But certainly we're working
Right.
through a very clear regulatory framework that isn't, by the way, even in, it's not from the South African government. We've put that
Yeah.
framework for ourselves because
Yeah.
we have to manage our brand reputation.
Right, right, right. I think the government conversation is a completely different one, especially when you go across markets on the continent. In Nigeria, however, one of the things that we've seen is we have a minister that oversees all of the technology industry and stuff like that, who is from the industry. So
Okay.
even from an agenda standpoint, they're very clear frameworks or both governance and regulatory in terms of how all of this is being managed going forward from a talent development standpoint, from a policy making standpoint, from an investment standpoint. It's exciting in Nigeria, I could say, and everybody on this side of the continent is really excited about what the future holds for this space. One last question before I let you go, Kenzie, is I call it the elevator masterclass, borrowing that expression from the elevator pitch for startups. What is your elevator masterclass for building brands that last?
Yeah, respect them. You're lucky to even be taking care of that brand. So respect the brand. It's not
Mm,
about you, it's about the brand. That's my elevator pitch.
wow, wow, that's it. Wow, wow. Encore, 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 encore. Thank you so much, Kenzie. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate you taking time to do this. I really hope that I'm able to get a hold of you sometime soon again. I know we have barely an hour today.